Live from Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines, this is the 2026 Condition of the State. Live coverage on the stations of Gray Media. Now, here's Iowa Political Director Dave Price.
Welcome to the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines. I am Gray's Iowa Political Director Dave Price. We are, let's call this the pregame, if you will, for the annual Condition of the State address. We'll get to why you're hearing a lot of background noise in a moment, but let's set the stage first. Governor Kim Reynolds, in less than 10 minutes, will walk essentially behind us before she walks into the Iowa House chambers. It's the bigger one of the House and the Senate. That's why they use this one. You can get a lot more people in there. So lawmakers will gather from both chambers, along with the members of the Iowa Supreme Court, who are gathered right behind me, and the state office holders from Iowa. They will all gather there along with the governor's family and friends and various folks up in the gallery for the speech tonight. Now, I mentioned these protesters. The governor is now walking through the protesters as she makes her way up the steps to get up here to the second floor, where she will deliver her speech in a moment. I'll pause so you can hear the hissing as the governor walks through. There are 100, 150 people or so, one floor beneath us. For the most part, they have been protesting federal deportation efforts to get out people who are suspected of living in the country illegally. So not anything per se about the governor based on their chants and their signs and all of that. The governor is now making her way onto this floor now that law enforcement has helped her get through the protesters assembled here. It's the first gentleman from Iowa, Kevin Reynolds, along with the governor, security behind her, and then some of her top staff. The lieutenant governor is a little bit past as they all get ready to walk into the House chamber. Now, a little background on the protest, which is still kind of echoing through the Capitol Rotunda here. I've been covering the Iowa legislature since 2001, and truthfully had to check with somebody here because I could not remember anything like this. There was a time somebody reminded me back when Terry Branstad came back to office in 2011 that there were some protesters out here. It wasn't exactly the same kind of setup, and I don't recall them being nearly as loud, and I also think they were spread out a little bit more. But to say the least, it's an unusual situation to see what we have gathered for what is traditionally an event where you don't see a lot of protesters in here. Now, to get back to what you are seeing in front of us. So these are members of the Iowa Supreme Court and various courts from across the state. They are among the distinguished guests who gather for this annual Condition of the State address. For the most part, lawmakers from both parties and both chambers were already assembled in their seats ahead of time. Obviously, we're talking about the House, so they have to make room for the members of the Senate to come join them. But they get members of the public and the invited guests all situated in their seats, and then they can bring in the governor, her family, some of the VIP guests, if you will, and some others who will make their way in there, and the governor's top staff, and some of the lawmakers, Lieutenant Governor as well, Chris Cournoyer, some of the other legislators who will help support the governor in. They are all assembled out here. Now, if we think back a year ago when the governor gave that condition of the address at the Condition of the State address at the time, there were a lot of bipartisan, really non-controversial measures the governor was talking about. If you think about what that speech was all about, some of it was focused on cell phones, making sure that our children were not on their phones too much at school, something that you were seeing pass in other states across the country. That earned bipartisan support in the legislature, and they passed that. So students in the public schools, at least, are not allowed to be using their phone for the most part during class. The cell phone ban also addressed drivers, so drivers are now required to go into hands-free mode. So a couple of the things the governor talked about back in 2025 that she was able to get through. There were some other things that she perhaps did not get through, and we will see tonight as she brings up certain things from the past. This is one topic that's come up numerous times. I think she's brought it up 3 or 4 times. Would be easier access to contraceptives so that you could get them without a prescription. You don't have to go to your doctor to get that. That is something that has been kind of an ongoing thing from the governor. We'll see if she brings that up tonight. One thing we can expect her to bring up, which should be no real surprise if you've watched any of the coverage over the last couple of weeks, would be property tax reform. The way this will go down this year is that we are going to see numerous property tax proposals. It's a very complicated system. It's tough to find anybody even in this building who can explain how the property taxes are levied across our state. But big picture, Republicans started talking about this last year. There was more optimism in the Iowa Senate than the Iowa House. But in the end, they couldn't come up with any kind of agreement. This time around, the governor says she will be more engaged in the process. In the fall and early winter, she was traveling around the state, meeting with various stakeholders on this, local city council members, county supervisors, mayors, chambers of commerce, those types of folks, to talk about how this could happen. If big picture, they're trying to figure out how to make sure your property taxes don't go up so much every year, every other year, however it works out. But how do you place restrictions as a state legislature on that without really hamstringing the local communities? They use those property taxes, of course, to pay for vital services, police and fire, schools, all kinds of things. So some of the local leaders have been imploring state lawmakers and the governor to not make these changes too restrictive so that they cannot provide the services they need. So tonight, we'll get to hear more of the specifics about what the governor is saying. And when I mentioned this is going to be kind of chaotic, the governor's will have her own proposal. Senate Republicans have already started working on their own. House Republicans have started working on one. House Democrats already put out some of the framework of their plan, and Senate Democrats are also working on one. So if you're keeping track of all of this, that is 5 different ideas. Now, of course, we need to be realistic here, and Republicans are in charge, so don't expect a lot of the Democratic ideas to get put into the final plan here. But if in the end we see 3 different Republican plans, the way the Senate Majority Leader Mike Clemish has explained it, they'll look at all 3. They'll all sit down with some of the key leaders here, pick out what do you like, what don't you like, and in the end hope that they can come up with some kind of legislation that they think they can pass in the House and Senate, something that the governor wants. But some of the early talk out here is that there are a lot of different ideas. Maybe they will share some commonalities, but it is a very complicated process, so it's a lot that they're going to have to try to figure out. And again, once you get the details out here, they know they will hear a lot from these local leaders if these are too restrictive. So property taxes is definitely we expect the governor to talk about tonight. We will see if she talks about any eminent domain restrictions. That was a sticking point and a flashpoint, especially in her party last year, as House Republicans, and we're standing outside the Iowa House, they passed some restrictions so that private companies, like the one that wants to build this carbon pipeline project, private companies like that would not be able to use the authority of eminent domain to force access on somebody's land. There have been protests, sometimes almost as big as the one we have out here tonight, but specifically focused from the landowners who are in the pathway of this. And they were here earlier today protesting as well. The House has already started legislation on this to pass something very similar to last year. if you remember all the drama last year, you had Senate Republicans fighting with each other. In the end, some of them broke away from leadership, sided with Democrats. They got a bill passed. It went to the governor. She vetoed it. So that sets the stage for this contentious, potentially, situation with members from their own party with Republicans to see what the circumstances are, as if they're all willing to get along and negotiate on different things this year. So having her bring up eminent domain tonight, probably not as likely. Well, we also, she won't talk about as many of the specifics on this during the speech, but that will be her budget plans for the next year. And this will be her final budget that she gets to put together as the governor. This is officially the second to last condition of the state address that she gives. This is really the last one that she will give before lawmakers here, where she's really putting out any kind of agenda. It's sort of a goodbye speech, if you will, next year, since she is retiring and she's not going to be laying out a budget and policy issues and all of that. So as we wait for the governor to approach the podium and give what will now be her 9th condition of the state address since she took office in 2017. This will be the one really cementing her legacy as she tries to finish up work that she has been unable to do perhaps during her first 9 years. She's made a lot of changes when it comes to education. That is something that has become very important to her, so we will listen tonight to see additional policy changes when it comes to education. We're just taking a peek here to see what's going on with the protesters. It seems like they're at least quieting down. We'll see if they're taking off as well. It looks like some of them are starting to walk away here. So as the governor gets ready to walk down through the chamber and then go up to take her place on the podium, again, just as the reminder here, this is the last condition of the state she gets to give as governor, with an agenda, if you will. So next year it'll be more of a farewell speech. And now Governor Reynolds.
It is my pleasure to introduce Governor Kim Reynolds for her Condition of the State message to the 2026 session of the 91st General Assembly.
Madam President, Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Governor, First Gentleman, legislative leaders and members, justices and judges, my fellow Iowans. So this is the 9th time that I've addressed you from this chamber to report on the condition of the state. It's a place that has witnessed nearly 2 centuries of Iowa history, moments of crisis and moments of courage, times of uncertainty and times of renewal. Yet through it all, one thing has remained constant: ordinary citizens stepping forward to do the extraordinary work of self-government. Every person in this room is a part of that story, and every session we add a new chapter, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, but always lasting. But history isn't only written by laws passed. It's written by lives lived in service, by people who gave their time, their talent, and their hearts to this state. This evening, we feel the loss of 3 of them who were with us last year. Representative Martin Graber, Senator Rocky DeWitt, and Senator Claire Celsey. We honor their lives, their service to the people of Iowa, and the deep commitment each of them brought to this institution. For many of us, they were more than colleagues. They were friends, and their presence will be greatly missed. Iowa also lost another state leader last year, Representative Janet Metcalf, who served in the Iowa House from 1985 to 2003 and passed away in March. Each of these public servants left a lasting mark on our state, and we are better for it. There's no greater calling than service, especially when it asks for the greatest sacrifice. Exactly 1 month ago, well beyond these walls and even beyond our nation's borders, Iowa suffered a different kind of loss, one that reached into every home in every small town and city neighborhood and into the very heart of who we are. On December 13th, 2025, a lone gunman with ties to ISIS opened fire on American troops in Syria. 2 of those killed and 3 wounded were Iowans. Our fallen soldiers served their state and their country with honor. As respected leaders, they were models of courage, commitment, and character. And as Americans who answered the call when freedom required it, they showed us the greatest love a person can give by laying down their life for their friends. Staff Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard of Marshalltown had always dreamed of becoming a soldier. He joined the Iowa National Guard at age 17 and served more than 11 years. He stood out not just for his dedication to the mission, but also to his brother and sisters in arms. Above all, Staff Sergeant Howard, Nate, to his family and friends, was a loyal son and brother and a loving husband. He cherished those closest to him with tenderness, humor, and a sincere heart. Staff Sergeant Edgar Torres Tovar of Des Moines was the pride of his parents and a role model to his siblings. He was certain that his purpose in life was to serve his country, and he enlisted in the United States Army after graduating from high school. He was the first in his family to wear the uniform, and in the words of his father, Hugo, he was their hero. Now, he's a hero to all of us. Iowans watched with heavy hearts as our fallen made their journey home, and Iowans were with them every step of the way. They were escorted from the Middle East by Iowa Guard soldiers and airmen, including Staff Sergeant Howard's own brother, Staff Sergeant James Rolsgaard, who served on the same deployment. When they arrived at Dover Air Force Base, another group of Iowans was waiting. The 185th Air Refueling Wing Mortuary Affairs Team, ready to care for their own with dignity and honor. When I reflect on the evil that robbed our state of 2 exceptional young men and wounded 3 others, I'm aware that there are no words can right the wrongs of their deaths or make up for the loss of their loved ones. But know this, their service lives on in the families they cherished, in the communities they strengthened, and in the freedoms they helped preserve. This evening, the Torres Tovar family is with their church community, observing the 30th day since their son's death with a special memorial service. They send their heartfelt gratitude to Iowans for their prayers and support. Staff Sergeant Howard's wife, parents, and brother are with us tonight. And I want you to know that you remain in our prayers, and we will never forget Nate's sacrifice. Tonight, we don't remember our fallen soldiers only in sorrow, but in gratitude. We don't speak their names only in grief, but in honor. And we don't pause simply to mourn, but to celebrate their lives and give thanks for the gift they've given all us. Please join me in honoring Staff Sergeant Howard, Staff Sergeant Torres Tovar, and their families with the applause of a free and grateful people. As we mourn and honor those we've lost, we haven't forgotten our 3 wounded warriors who answered the same call to duty that day. One soldier was treated for minor injuries and returned to his unit where he remains to complete this mission. The other 2 soldiers were seriously injured and in their most critical moments were cared for by fellow Iowans. Airmen from the 185th Air Refueling Wing Medical Group, based out of Sioux City and deployed in the Middle East, took charge of the soldiers' treatment and evacuation. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Niles shared that the wounded were reassured, knowing that it was fellow Iowa Guardsmen caring for them, praying with them, and standing beside them. Days later, they transferred our 2 wounded soldiers to Germany for stabilization, and then home to the United States to continue their recovery with their families. Iowans taking care of Iowans, all in the service of their country, and our state could not be prouder. And tonight, I am pleased to share some good news. Both soldiers have been discharged from the hospital and are now being treated in an outpatient facility, and both are doing extremely well and improving every day. I speak for everyone to say, we can't wait to welcome you home. As I've declared every time I've been at this podium, the condition of our state is strong. It's strong in our families, it's strong in our communities, and what we've seen so clearly is it's strong in the men and women who are willing to stand watch for all of us. With 1,800 Iowa National Guard soldiers and airmen currently deployed overseas in support of Operation Inherent Resolve, nearly everyone in our state has a connection to someone serving. Whether it's a son or a daughter, a spouse or a parent, a friend, neighbor, or coworker, our heroes in uniform are on the front lines in the fight against evil. They're the tip of the spear and the center of the shield. And they've done more than we can ever repay. Here at home, their families are serving in their own way, holding the home front steady, carrying on with strength and grace, and looking forward to the day when their soldiers return home. Some of the families of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division are with us tonight. Will you please stand so that we can thank you for your service too? We owe our service members a debt of gratitude, and that debt is best paid by ensuring that our veterans get every benefit they've earned. Iowa is home to nearly 178,000 veterans, yet only a third is receiving the benefits they've earned, placing Iowa 44th in the nation for VA compensation, and that's not acceptable. An outdated system that provides little accountability is leaving too many veterans and well-meaning county officials without the tools, training, and consistency they need. So tonight, I'm proposing a bill to modernize the system statewide. I'm also proposing that we incentivize better performance by repurposing existing state funds to create a new performance-based county grant program. The higher a county's VA compensation per capita, the more money a county will earn, ensuring that outcomes improve. The goal is simple: more benefits reaching more veterans. So let's do more for the heroes who have done so much for us. When I first took office in 2017, Iowa's top income tax rate was 8.98%, among the nation's highest. So was our 12% corporate tax rate. Those taxes weren't just numbers on a page. They were eating into paychecks, increasing the cost of doing business, and quietly making life more expensive for Iowa families. So we took bold, decisive action. We eliminated the inheritance tax and taxes on retirement income so families could keep what they'd worked a lifetime to build. We reformed the corporate tax structure and are on our way to a flat 5.5%, making it easier to grow a business and hire Iowans. We enacted a 3.8% flat income tax, so your paycheck goes further. And last year, we cut the unemployment insurance tax in half, which will protect jobs and hold down prices. And I am so proud to say that we've cut taxes more than any other state in the country. That's more than just a number, a ranking, or a percentage. It means more room in the budget for groceries, for school supplies, for a tank of gas. It means saving more instead of falling a little further behind. And thanks to President Trump's historic tax cuts for working families, Iowans are set to save big on federal taxes too. And it gets even better, because we made the decision 8 years ago to match all federal tax cuts at the state level. Iowans will get the same relief on their state taxes, including eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security. Not every state is doing this or even can because of poor budgeting and runaway spending. But in Iowa, we believe the money you earn is better used by your family than your government. Today, the momentum is real. Despite a challenging global economy, we've attracted over $20 billion in new capital investments since 2024, creating new jobs and new opportunities. Yet for all of the progress we've made, one issue continues to impact Iowans in every community and across every income level: property taxes. Whether you live in a small town, growing suburb, or urban neighborhood, you've probably felt it. Property taxes are rising faster than inflation, faster than paychecks, and faster than population growth. In fact, over the last 2 years, they've gone up more than 10%, and that's not acceptable. Last fall, I held a series of roundtable discussions across the state to hear from Iowans about how it's affecting them. A farmer told me his property taxes have increased 5-fold to the point where he fears he won't be able to keep his land and pass it on to the next generation. Kate, a small business owner, said rising property taxes are crowding out her ability to reinvest in her business and her community. And then there's Sandy, a senior, who because of high property taxes is worried about staying in her home. Everyone struggles, she wrote to my office, but they seem to make it even harder when you're a senior. For each of these stories, there are countless others. And though the problem is clear, the reasons are complicated and many, and that makes it hard to fix. Over the years, we've tried to rein in local taxing authority, but it's often felt like squeezing a balloon. Limit one levy and another one expands. So this year, we need to go after the real driver of the problem: spending. Spending is what drives taxes, always has, always will, and the most reliable way to protect taxpayers is to limit the growth of government itself. I'm introducing a property tax bill that will cap overall revenue growth for local governments. That way, they can't grow faster than the families who pay the bills. It's simple but effective. You remember when we were kids, our parents would tell us that money doesn't grow on trees. Well, it's time government learned that too. Wouldn't you agree? To help protect families from runaway spikes and provide more predictability, I'm also proposing to move property tax assessments to every 3 years instead of every 2. And we're taking the taxpayers to appeal large increases and putting it on assessors to justify them. I know many in this chamber have other ideas, and I welcome them. But this is how we begin to tackle the problem and put families back in control. While nearly every homeowner is feeling the pain of property taxes, one group is especially impacted: our seniors. Property taxes were never designed for a world where home values soar while incomes stay flat. For older Iowans living on fixed incomes, rising assessments don't mean rising wealth. They mean rising anxiety. Seniors who did everything right, who worked hard, paid their taxes, and saved, are at risk of being taxed out of the very home they hope to grow old in. And that's really not how it should work. My proposal freezes property tax bills for Iowans aged 65 and up whose homes are valued at $350,000 or less, so they can stay in their homes and their communities, because no one should be taxed out of their own front door. Rising property taxes and home prices also leave young Iowans wondering if they'll ever be able to achieve the American dream. And that's why I'm also proposing to create a tax-deductible savings account for first-time homeowners modeled on Iowa's 529 program, so families can contribute years in advance, helping sons, daughters, even grandchildren be prepared for home ownership when the time comes. And it's also why I'm introducing legislation to modernize the beginning farmer's tax credit, expanding its size and making it refundable, and extending it to land sales as well as leases. That'll also strengthen our multi-generational farm families as the credit applies to sales and leases to relatives. Whatever their dream, let's make sure it's within their reach, so more young Iowans will choose to build their future here. These are important changes and they need to be made, but here's the truth. Property taxes are driven locally, so they can't be fixed by state government alone. If Iowans want lower property taxes, we must also change how local government works and who we elect to run it. We need leaders who understand that government can't grow faster than the families who pay for it. And if you're one of those people, please run for office. Because we need a government that lives within its means and leaders who will do the same. We're doing this at the state level. We've aligned agencies, eliminated 21 departments, and cut over 4,000 regulations. And we're not done, and we never should be. Because businesses and families don't make one budget and call it good. They're constantly finding better ways to save and do more with less. So are we. Today, we're working with some of the biggest names in tech to modernize state systems, drive efficiencies, and improve services. We're partnering with Amazon Web Services to consolidate more than 50 state call centers into a single, smarter system that will use AI to get Iowans the help they need faster, simpler, and at a lower cost. And through a new partnership with Google Public Sector, we're building a modern, intuitive, and fully compliant, comprehensive child welfare system in a fraction of the time and for less than half the typical cost. This transformational project will save taxpayers dollars, and it will serve as a national model. And that's what efficiency looks like, and that's how we keep spending in check so Iowans can keep more of their money. And now it's time to take that very same approach locally. Many communities already are. Scott County manages waste services at no direct cost to its 17 member communities, saving nearly $16 million every year. Other cities have partnered with their counties for law enforcement services, share county engineers, and contract with their local hospitals to provide the county's public health services. These solutions do more than save money. They represent the same practical, responsible approach that Iowa families take every day. And it's time more governments do the same. And starting tonight, every Iowan can go online to the Iowa Department of Management's website and see how their city or county is spending their tax dollars. I encourage you to take a look at those budgets, ask questions, and help us be part of the solution. Tonight, I want to address another issue that cuts across all communities. It's one I know weighs on the minds of many Iowans, our fight against cancer. Every year, more than 2,000 Iowans are diagnosed with this terrible disease. Everyone in this room has been affected by it in some way. Hearing the news that you or someone you love has cancer is devastating. I know it personally with Kevin's diagnosis 2 years ago. And even though we now understand what a diagnosis means and how we can manage it, questions of why it happened remain unanswered. And that's a reality many Iowa families struggle with, which is why last year I directed Iowa HHS to partner with the University of Iowa College of Public Health to begin the most comprehensive study of cancer ever undertaken in our state. In the coming weeks, the initial findings will be released, but we're not waiting for a report to act, because some of the most powerful tools in the fight against cancer are already clear. When cancer is found early, lives are saved and families are spared unimaginable loss. Breast cancer, caught at stage 1, has a 99% survival rate. Prostate cancer is nearly 100%. At stage 4, however, those survival rates dip below 40%. That's why early detection is so important. It doesn't just change outcomes, it changes lives. And that belief became the personal mission of Joe Garcia of Urbandale. Joe lost his wife, Jennifer, to cancer in 2016. Since then, he's been driven by a vision, a future where everyone knows about cancer screening, has access to it, regardless of income, insurance, or zip code, and where no family hears the words, "We found it too late." When Joe and his son, JT, came to my office and shared that vision, I knew it was one Iowa had to help with. Joe, JT, and Mike Schweers, who also lost his wife, Linda, to cancer, are with us tonight. Their advocacy has helped turn awareness into action, and their voices have helped shape the statewide effort we're launching now. Please join me in thanking them for honoring their loved ones by helping protect families across Iowa. Tonight, I have to tell you that Joe's vision is becoming Iowa's mission. Just 2 weeks ago, Iowa's innovative plan to strengthen rural health care, called Healthy Hometowns, was awarded $209 million for year 1 of the federal Rural Health Transformation Program. Just this year, more than $50 million will be invested specifically in cancer prevention, screening, and treatment. and we expect it to grow to 183 million over 4 years, and that's just for cancer. Here's what that means for families. It means a working parent who can get a mammogram and a follow-up MRI before a lump becomes a diagnosis. It means Iowans can do a colon cancer test at home and get a colonoscopy before symptoms appear. It means telehealth visits and new skin cancer screening tools so care doesn't get delayed because life is busy. It means routine prostate exams, catching cancer while it's still treatable. And it means radon testing and mitigation so families aren't unknowingly exposed to the second leading cause of lung cancer in their own homes. We're making early detection the norm, not the exception, replacing fear with hope and making sure that if families hear the word cancer, they also hear, we caught it early and we can treat it. That's how lives are saved, and that's what Iowa is building right now. Of course, early detection is just the beginning. What happens next is just as important. How quickly care starts, how close to home it can be delivered, and how well families are supported through the hardest days of their lives. Through Healthy Hometowns Initiative, we're developing cancer care hubs, helping fund the equipment, oncologists, and advanced medical technology necessary to provide this specialized treatment. That's step one, and it starts this year. Then we'll complete this hub and spoke model by opening satellite clinics in outlying communities where patients can get a routine cancer care even closer to home. This effort expands on our proven Centers of Excellence program, which has increased access to maternal health care in rural Iowa. Now, with a strong foundation in place, we can move faster, go further, and truly transform care by expanding the model to cardiovascular care and mental health. We'll not only improve care, we'll help Iowans get healthier, live healthier, and stay that way. Our Healthy Hometown Plan also supports communities in creating local care teams who together provide primary care and chronic disease management for their patients, and ideally locate all providers within one building. Consider what it would be like if a patient with diabetes, heart disease can see his primary care provider for a routine visit, then meet with a dietitian to create a personalized meal plan, discuss his medications with a pharmacy tech, and consult with a care navigator about his health goals, all in one afternoon and at one location. It would be transformational, and it's all within reach right now. As soon as our plan was submitted, we moved into action, opening applications and engaging the medical community, resulting in over 250 proposals from across the state. And by the end of this month, we'll begin awarding contracts, turning this investment into life-saving treatment. And this is how transformation begins, not with talk, but with action. It's also important to encourage healthy behaviors so we can reduce the high rate of chronic illnesses. Across the United States, More than 40% of children have at least one chronic health condition, and obesity is a major driver of many of them. That's concerning since 1 out of every 6 children in Iowa are considered obese, and Iowa ranks 17th in the nation for adult obesity. This is a serious public health issue, and it's one we're working to address. Iowa was one of the first states in the country to refocus 2 federal food assistance programs on the reasons they were created, to help low-income families afford nutritious foods. With USDA's approval, SNAP and summer EBT in Iowa will help families purchase fresh produce, grains, meat, and dairy, but candy, sweets, and soft drinks are no longer covered. This year, I'm asking the legislature to make sure that our state always maintains a nutrition-first focus for these programs by directing Iowa HHS to maintain a federal waiver going forward. The days of government programs that enable chronic illness are over. It's time for a new era of accountability and health. I'm also requiring physicians take nutrition classes as part of their continuing medical education, so more Iowans have access to the information they need to make informed dietary choices. Lastly, I'm introducing a bill to remove artificial food dyes from school lunch programs. Studies show these chemicals, which provide 0 health benefits, contribute to behavioral issues. We can do better for our kids, and we will. For the last 9 years, one principle has guided our work in education: putting students first. That has meant focusing on what really improves outcomes: early intervention, strong instruction, clear accountability, and real options for families. We focused on evidence-based literacy instruction, training teachers in the science of reading, identifying struggling readers earlier, and giving parents clear tools and choices to help every child master the most important skill they'll ever learn. We strengthened accountability, expanded work-based learning, and focused our system on real student growth, not paperwork. And last year, we applied the same evidence-based principles to math instruction. We also gave teachers the largest raise in state history, because attracting and retaining great teachers is essential to strong schools. And when the pandemic disrupted learning, Iowa kept classrooms open, prioritized stability and mental health, and helped fuel one of the fastest recoveries in the nation. We also expanded educational options, because no single model works for every child. Today, Iowa families can choose the school that best fits their needs, whether that's a neighborhood public school, another district, a public charter school, or a private school through education savings accounts. And this year marks a milestone. For the first time in Iowa history, education saving accounts were universally available, meaning the same state cost per pupil follows every child, regardless of income or zip code. Our message to the nation is simple. In Iowa, we fund students, not systems, and the results speak for themselves. At a time when 78% of America's high school seniors are below proficiency in math and 65% in reading, Iowa is moving in the opposite direction. We're one of only 3 states in the nation whose students now outperform their own pre-COVID levels in reading and math. 3rd and 4th grade reading proficiency is up 11%. 10th grade science proficiency is up 7%. Absenteeism is down nearly 10%. Attendance is improving. Literacy is improving. Science is improving. Engagement is improving. And teacher vacancies have dropped by more than 30% and are at half the national average. And the nation is taking notice. Just last week at Broadway Elementary in Denison, U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon and I announced a first-in-the-nation initiative granting Iowa greater control over federal education funding. This marks an important first step toward fully returning education to the states and ensuring federal resources are aligned with Iowa priorities and Iowa student outcomes. Broadway Elementary is the perfect example of why that matters. Innovation was happening in every classroom we visited. Dual language immersion, STEM, and the science of reading, and it's driving student achievement. Literacy proficiency jumped from 65% to 72% in just 1 year. This is what's possible when states and schools are empowered to focus on the work that expands opportunities for every student. I want to thank the administrators, the teachers, and the students in Denison for proving why Iowa is leading education nationwide. Please stand so we can honor your outstanding work. All of this happened because Iowa made a clear decision to put students first. That's reflected in the laws we pass, the standards we set, and the priorities we fund. And it comes to life in our classrooms, where teachers meet kids where they are, believe in what they can become, and do the quiet, everyday work that changes lives. To every educator who puts students first, thank you for shaping Iowa's future. One of the clearest examples of our Students First approach can be found in Cedar Rapids. This year, Cedar Rapids Prep, a tuition-free public charter school, opened its doors for middle school students and quickly filled every seat with a waiting list already forming. Demand has been so strong that plans are already moving forward to expand the school, adding grade levels and a new facility to serve even more families. Some have described that success as a problem, not because students are struggling, but because enrollment shifts mean that some traditional public schools may need to adjust staffing or facilities. In other words, the concern is not about how children are doing, it's about how systems are changing. And that's the wrong way to look at it. If parents are choosing a school because they believe it's working for their children, that's not something to resist. That's something to celebrate. When a school meets the needs of families, that's progress. And Cedar Rapids is not alone. Other public charter schools are seeking to open across the state next year, bringing even more options to families who want them. Choice doesn't weaken our commitment to public education. It strengthens it by making every school focus on what matters most, the students in front of them. That's why I'm proposing a bill to ensure per pupil funding truly follows the student so that every public school student receives equal support no matter which public school they attend. Because equity isn't just about funding, it's also about access. My proposal will ensure that public charter school students have access to concurrent enrollment and extracurricular activities, just like students in national public schools. Every student deserves access to college credit and activities, not because of where they attend school, but because they are an Iowa kid. And that's what education is about in the end. Not programs, not politics, but students. Iowa will remain a state that puts students first, and we will never look back. I couldn't be prouder to be the governor of Iowa. Across every one of our 99 counties, our people are hardworking, independent, and strong. They believe in responsibility, in community, and in leaving things better than they found them. Serving you has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. And as I enter into my final legislative session as governor, I do so deeply grateful, fully committed, and determined to finish strong. There will be time to look back and time to say thank you. But tonight, our focus is forward on what still needs to be done and on doing it together. Because every person in this chamber came here for the same reason, to do what you believe is right for the people of Iowa. We may disagree, we have disagreed, and we will disagree again. But those disagreements have always been rooted in conviction, not indifference, and in a shared belief that Iowa is worth fighting for. And that's what this session must be about. Not politics, but people. The people who sent us here. The families trying to make ends meet. The farmers weathering uncertainty. The veterans who served us. The students preparing for their future. The seniors who want to stay in their homes, and the young Iowans who are looking to buy their first home. The small businesses and communities that form the backbone of our state. So let's meet this moment the way Iowans always have, with honesty, with humility, and with a willingness to work together. Let's solve real problems, deliver real results, and let's leave Iowa stronger than we found it. The condition of our state is strong, and with the work we do here together, its future will be even stronger. So thank you, God bless you, and God bless the great state of Iowa. Thank you.
Governor Kim Reynolds delivering what is now her 9th Condition of the State address as the governor of Iowa. About 50 or so minutes, give or take a few. as she laid out her themes for the year ahead. She will give a speech next year, but of course it will be a far different feel from what it was this one. This was important for her as she lays out her final agenda, really, for lawmakers. And much as we thought would happen, she laid out her plans for property taxes. Expect to hear a lot about this, and we'll hear what the reaction is from local communities as they hear this, as the governor is touting what her staff says will be $3 billion in savings for property owners over the next 6 years. That means $3 billion that local governments will not be receiving in property tax revenue. There are some other changes that they're making to the way businesses pay taxes. The governor now walking out of the chamber with her husband and some security behind her. The protesters that we saw, if you were with us before this address began tonight, so one floor down here at the Iowa State House, those folks have disappeared, 150 of them. They have left the building. So while the governor had to walk essentially through some of those protesters before her speech, she does not have to do that as she now departs, heads down the stairs, and then heads back toward her office. So the property tax plan by the governor, she laid out some of the themes, but I mentioned that it could provide what her staff says will be $3 billion in savings over the next 6 years. So again, the offset of that is that local governments will not be receiving that revenue. Part of the provision would include a property tax freeze for folks who are 65 and older, and it will include most homes. The cutoff was $375,000. So most homes would fall under that. So that will, again, be one of the ways that it will be providing some relief for some people across the state, but it will also then be limiting how much some of these local governments can bring in revenue. And another provision that she will have in her policies will be a $10 million fund. Go ahead, folks. Thank you. Sorry to box you in here. We're going to slide a little bit so we can allow the members of the military who are up in the gallery watching the speech can have plenty of room, along with some of the youngsters who gathered up top to listen to this speech as well. So you have the senior freeze in there. Now, to offset a small portion of this, the governor is trying to incent communities to band together as a way to cut expenses, essentially. So there's a $10 million grant. And the plan would be communities pitch an idea about how they're going to share some services, and they could offset if there's some kind of startup cost or something like that. $10 million would go into this as a way to provide some kind of pathway for them finding ways to reduce costs, because that will be important for them if they're losing a lot of this revenue if this plan should go through. Before we get into a lot of more of the specifics, though, we need to caution this is just one plan. We already know Senate Republicans have a plan. House Republicans plan to have their own. House Democrats and Senate Democrats, and no offense to the Democrats, but they're in the minority here, so primarily it'll be the Republicans who are doing the main planning on what any kind of final proposal would look like here. But the property tax one for sure would be one to follow. Another thing, and we'll have to get a few more specifics on this, but the governor's plan would eliminate some of the mandates requiring local elections. So maybe you're electing a county assessor, those county recorder, those kind of local positions. In theory, a county could work with the state and would no longer have to have those types of elections, and maybe your county board of supervisor could just appoint the people to those positions. It would not be a mandate, but a community, as we understand it, could opt into this system. So that will be something to watch, and in theory, that could be another cost-saving idea. I mentioned that there could be a way that this would impact business taxes, and that would be for the way the state provides this backfill for something that's been in place for a number of years. but they're going to take this away. So this will impact businesses if they were receiving this, but it could mean a potential savings for state revenue for $125 million a year, which, if you've been following our reporting through this, if you cut people's taxes and the state is bringing in a lot less money, they're going to have to look for ways to cut costs. This could be a significant one if this would go through and they would save $125 million. Now, there are some other things that she is looking, maybe following the federal MAHA movement, to eliminate some of the additives, the dyes, those kind of things in foods. So that is something she wants to push. I want to bring in some live reaction to this. Leader Kaufman, you good? Thanks for coming. Congratulations. Haven't seen you since you had this. All right, so I know you're still digesting a lot of the speech here, but property tax, as you well know, super complicated, right?
Yes.
So as we have folks from across the state joining us, trying to decipher what the heck all of this is, what are your first impressions of what the governor is talking with property taxes? Then we'll get to maybe what you all are going to try to do.
My first impression is that she's listening. And I think something that's changed from this year, from last year, is that you've already seen a Senate bill come out. You just heard the governor talk about what's in her legislation, and you'll see a piece of House legislation as well. So I think the fact that there's 3 robust, legitimate bills shows you that that's pretty much a lock for something to get done. How that ends up looking and all the different moving pieces to be determined. But to have 3 bills from all 3 branches is a big deal.
You can compromise with 3 robust ideas?
I think the more ideas, the better the compromise. You know, we've got so many things laid out. The 103-page Senate bill, she's got a very aggressive approach. You'll see us having an aggressive approach. I think the more ideas that are out there in this sphere, the more options we have to craft the best bill.
You were a small town guy. Your dad was a county supervisor, it still is. I'm curious, how do you think this will go over to the local folks? So, you know, for homeowners to save, it means less money coming into the locals, right? So how do they absorb these changes? If we freeze senior property taxes, all of these combination of things, how will it affect local governments and local service?
Well, as you started with, this is probably one of the more complex problems in the building, if not of the last decade. So when you've got these many ideas, I'm not trying to punt on this question, but truly our philosophy is they now will see the bills, they'll now see the legislation, and then they'll come to us and say, hey, we're thinking maybe about this being a little bit different or this tweak, but the bottom line is we're looking at being on the side of the taxpayer rather than the taxing entities. And I think that message was delivered loud and clear. So we'll work through the committee process, put all 3 bills together, and local governments will absolutely have a seat at the table.
I mean, I could mention your dad served here. He could have solved it when he was here. Maybe you're the guy who does.
I would just say that I think his perspective now is probably a little bit different than before, and that'll just be one more thing that I got accomplished that he did not.
Very good. Will you talk a little bit about, again, talking about back home for you, the rural health? In particular, a huge chunk of this will be focused on cancer research, cancer screening, all those kind of things. I know it's super early on, but how does this all play out?
I mean, I think Iowans spoke loud and clearly they wanted something aggressive when it comes to combating cancer. The governor was right. There is very few family, if any at all, that aren't affected in some way, shape, or form by cancer. So I think having such a robust investment coupled with the program, I think the most important thing about what she said is the early detection piece. If you can have families hear that horrible news followed by, but we have a way to fix it, I think that's going to change lives in a few ways that we can do things up here.
Having the families of the National Guard soldiers was obviously a powerful moment. What was it like to be in the chamber?
It was a tearjerker. To see moms and dads and brothers and sisters and loved ones, number one, seeing their children honored, but also just the emotion on your face. It's impossible for that to not to pull at the heartstrings. And obviously, all the different proposals that she had to back up our veterans and to have their back, I think you're going to see some robust support for those initiatives. But it was a real tearjerker.
Thank you. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good to see you. Thank you. As he mentioned, House Republicans will be working on their own property tax plan. So robust in his mind, so in his words, robust from the House, robust from the Senate, robust from the governor. That's a lot of robust they're going to have to bring in. And I will bring in Sean Begneski, the state representative from Des Moines, one of the Democrats' House Minority Whips. I'm going to guess that you don't agree with everything Leader Kaufman just said here, but let's get your initial reactions to the speech.
I thought we'd hear a lot more tonight. Republicans have been in control for 9 years now, Senate, House, and in the governor's office. Didn't hear any specifics on property taxes, no specifics on water quality, pipeline, eminent domain, balancing the budget, economic growth. So you would think after 9 years they'd have a lot more to say, and we really didn't hear it tonight.
Well, she talked about some of the things with property taxes, and I appreciate that you were not in the budget briefing earlier where they laid out some of this, but her staff is stressing that this will reduce $3 billion potentially in increases for property tax owners. That does mean, of course, then the locals are not bringing that money in. Is there a way to realistically, in your mind, provide relief to homeowners and not harm local governments and force them to make cuts?
Yeah, I mean, so we didn't hear any specific targets tonight. House Democrats proposed a 4% cap. We didn't hear an actual number.
I think hers is 2.
Is it 2? Okay. So I would love to hear that. We heard a cap on senior property tax increases, which we agreed with when we rolled out last week. As far as the budget, the House Republicans, Senate Republicans, and Kim Reynolds overspent by $900 million last year, overspent by $1 billion this year. I hope we can balance the budget this year.
How will you follow the budget situation? Clearly, they're going to have to dip in pretty heavily to the taxpayer relief fund. What should Iowans be watching with this? I know you disagree with the way they think this is going to level out.
Right. We're looking at the overall amount. So how much do we have in reserves? How much do we have in the rainy day fund? Right now, we've got about $5 billion left. And if we're overspending by $1 billion every year, then you can do the math on when we run out. And then we're looking at kind of a Kansas bankruptcy situation.
We had pretty sizable protest, appropriate, inappropriate to do that as the kind of hissing and chanting at the governor as she walks through.
Yeah, I was going to say, we didn't hear any protests in the chamber, which, I wish both members of both parties in Washington, D.C. would do the same thing for the State of the Union. The protesters tonight, there were pipeline people who were very angry. There were ICE folks or people against ICE who were very angry tonight. It's their constitutional right, but we do need to be, respectful of where we are, wherever we are.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
So Governor Reynolds with her 9th condition of the state, and there really is a lot to digest. She doesn't spend a lot of time in there on the budgets. As we start going through I'll show you this budget briefing book here that they hand out. That has a lot of the specifics about the budget, which people will be working through. If my math is right, primarily it's about a 2% increase in spending the governor is talking about for the coming year, which will force, as they planned out here, they will dip into the state's reserves to handle what looks like a more than $1 billion shortfall where they will have spending versus what is actually coming in. So as we learn a little bit more about this, we have to get through all the fine points about what gets what. I believe public schools will get essentially a 2% per student increase. That's usually one of those headline numbers everybody wants to know about. And with inflation nationally at about 2.7%, I think the last one I saw, this could possibly be another year where schools are funded at below the rate of inflation. But we will learn more about that as we start digging through this, and it goes through the budget process. This is just a blueprint here. Both chambers now, House and Senate, have to work their way through this. Some of them got a heads up a little bit on what some of this would be, but they are learning some of the fine points of this too. Now they have to decide how they're all going to agree and where they can agree. As Representative Begneski said, the governor did not talk about eminent domain or that carbon pipeline. The business owner, Bruce Rastetter, was in the building here, the one who wants to build the pipeline. He was here. I saw him downstairs. I presume he probably was in there listening to the speech. But that is definitely an issue to watch. Very spirited debate that we've had on this. Not something the governor addressed, but that is something we will have to follow during this legislative session to see how that plays out, and if tensions about that issue will impact any other issues as they have to go through the negotiating process of what gets passed here and what does not get passed here. So that wraps up our coverage here at the Iowa State House here in Des Moines. We appreciate you joining us tonight for the 9th time Governor Kim Reynolds delivering her condition of the state address. Have a good night.